Hello, you're watching Wareham here at WCTV with me, your host, Queen Banda. Today with me in the studio is Peter Tietlebaum, a selectman here in Wareham. He and I are going to be talking about how possibly pretty much a Wareham Topia could look like, the perfect Wareham downtown could look like, right, Peter?
Possibly. I would caution you to say that this may not be the Wareham Topia that is the final result. This is one vision of a Wareham Topia, and it contains some interesting elements for us to go over.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So I like the visuals, and they're fantastic, and just looking through them, just kind of in a broad brush, everything looks perfect. So let's get to how this idea come about. Who suggested this idea?
This came from our Community and Economic Development Authority. They commissioned a study looking at Merchants Way, how it might possibly altered, changed, improved upon, some features added to make it more human-friendly. Right now, essentially, it acts as a road and a parking lot. And there isn't a lot of activity back there, certainly not the kind of activity we want to encourage. I'll leave it at that. People come and fish there in the summer, otherwise it's just a pass-through.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of a shame because we have such a great view out over the water. It's a place where people could kayak. It's a place where people do fish intensely in the summer. So it does get that use. But it's almost unfortunate that the main street wasn't put there and instead was put here.
Okay. So I see that the big part of this idea is to kind of shift the direction of where everything is looking at. Right now we are giving attention to the road, and this plan is suggesting that we need to give attention to our waterfront.
Right, and the caveat is you're not going to shift all the attention to the waterfront. Some of the stores, for example, their focus needs to be on Main Street because that's where the buildings are set up. That's where they have the glass display windows. That's where people are going to see, for example, with both the consignment shop and also the Twigs and Tides shop. That's where people drive by, see what's in the window, or if they're walking by, if they're near the post office. Stores like that probably aren't going to shift their focus back here. But things like the restaurants could. We have Minerva's, we have El Mariachi. I don't know that Riverside is really situated to do that. Mama Mary's possibly.
Yes.
These are places that perhaps might want to sort of improve things back here, have seating back here.
So we'll have both the restaurants that are facing the main road, and there'll be the restaurants that are facing the water side.
Well, they could be facing both directions.
Okay.
And, in the summertime especially, would you rather sit out on Main Street and have a meal, or would you rather sit back here and look at the swans and the people kayaking and the natural scenery?
Absolutely. All right, so let's walk a little bit through. What are we looking at here?
Well, this is Sandwich Road. It's coming over the Narrows Bridge. Here's the railroad track. This is Main Street down here. We're not really going to be talking about that too much. And according to this concept plan, this would be sort of a revised Merchants Way. You would have still the sewer pump station. There's no getting rid of that. We have to have it. It's not the most attractive facility, but as you will see in other pictures, the idea would be to grass around it and then put in some trees to sort of screen it so we're not just staring at this big concrete and brick block house. Going along here, substantially this parking remains the same. It's straight back here now along the railroad tracks. This shows a little curvature where you would have a couple of trees here. You would shift the parking a little bit with an arc, as you can see, and then again here with an arc to put some trees in. That's what this plan calls for.
Yes.
Now, whether any of that happens, God only knows. This is a walkway along here, the sidewalk, if you will. The interesting feature, and I don't know that the railroad would be too happy about this portion of it, would be a cantilevered path right over the bridge, the railroad bridge. But starting here, a boardwalk.
Okay.
And as we look at this particular vision, would show 3 piers.
Yes.
Sure.
All right. So then our next photo.
Right, that's the.
All right. Yes, there's 2 of them.
Already done that one. Intermodal Transportation Depot. That's kind of a non-starter. We don't have room to put buses back here. We don't have room for people to really park all that much back here. I don't see that it's going to turn into a bus depot per se. It seems a little congested here, to be honest with you. So that's I wouldn't put too much stock in that. We talk about a raised covered platform, but that would presume that there was going to be a train stopping here, and I don't think that's going to happen. We've already got the Cape Flyer stop further up the tracks. They're not going to move that down here that we specifically asked for and had it put there because we do have town-owned land. The parking lot there is town-owned. It's all part of Merchants Way, so we own that, we control it. It's underutilized, so as people get used to possibly taking the train down here and it fills up a little bit, at least we have the space to handle some of these people. And by the way, I don't want anybody to think that what I'm talking about is definitive or has already been decided or is the way it's going to be. I'm just one member of the Board of Selectmen. I'm interested in this, but that doesn't mean that my vision is everybody's vision. That doesn't mean that what I say is going to happen. We're just bouncing ideas around today, so I just want to make that clear.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep bouncing the ideas away.
Now, here's a vision of the Merchants Way train station. You've got tables out here. I don't know if it's for a coffee shop or a restaurant or what have you. Maybe it's just tables where people come and have lunch. Again, I don't see the need for the platform here. That's not going to happen. Okay. An arch, I don't know, maybe. Who knows?
Okay. And they see, of course, I see the bus, so going back to that idea of
I don't really see that, but who knows?
Okay.
So that's pretty much all there is to see there. This shows the overhead that we looked at showed sort of a pavilion here with a dock coming out and extending off of here. And here you see the kayakers, and I don't know about the pavilion, the dock might not be quite so grandiose, but nonetheless, a dock in this area would be great. Okay. And, maybe the kayak company would want to have a stand here, for example, or at least space on the pier to run a kayak service there. They're already talking possibly about, going into Tremont Nail because there is a kayak launch right there, interestingly enough. So that's what this would be. You're looking down here, here's your railroad tracks, here's your boardwalk, here's your dock with, a covered pavilion, who knows. And, that we know is here. We already have those.
Yes.
So, whoops, we'll take advantage of the kayakers. Now, this would be the entrance off of Sandwich Road if you planted all these trees and did the gardens and the green spaces. As you can see, it makes this thing a little bit more hidden.
Absolutely.
It would narrow this entrance. You might lose some parking spaces over here. We would have to look at the impacts to these businesses before and that's another thing too. The impacts to the existing businesses have to be taken into account before you go ahead and just impose a vision and take away parking, which means taking away customers. So you have to be cautious with things like this.
Absolutely.
But anyway, this looks certainly more green and a little more welcoming than what you have there now.
I see a lot of gardens added into this plan, or all of these plans shows a lot of gardens, and of course we have a gardening club here in our town.
We do. They work hard. I don't know how much more work they're willing to take on, but and this is another thing that we have to determine is, okay, let's say we built all this stuff. Who's going to maintain it? Our already strapped municipal maintenance department that has a quarter of the employees it had when I was a kid, when we had a third as many people in town. Yeah, they're not going to be able to do all this work. So how does that happen? Are you going to have all these gardens? Who's going to maintain them? Are you going to have all these trees? Is the town going to be trimming them and cutting off dead branches? And you're adding on to the municipal workload when you do something like this. We acknowledge that. So that has to be part of the consideration for anything that's done. So business impacts, impacts to town departments and the town budget. So these are all things that have to come into play before you can come up with a comprehensive plan.
Okay, to our last poster.
Yes, the last poster here, this is an interesting one. This shows the spot between, this would be El Mariachi over here, and this would be the side of the...
Beauty Nail Salon?
Right, yeah, exactly, that building that has the nail salon here and then next door the Gone Hollywood salon. And as you can see, no more road, you can't drive through, gardens. It's been proposed, and actually Tracy Medeiros of the Gallery Consignment Shop came up with this, and perhaps if you could do something here with the old railway station, to enhance that experience. I don't know, would you have a snack bar in there? I don't know, a coffee shop? Would you have something so that people could stay here and sit out on a nice Sunday afternoon in the summer and enjoy some music in the afternoon.
So I hear that more businesses to go in, so that this development invites more businesses. More
Well, it invites
coffee
people.
shops.
It invites people,
Okay.
and if so, it hopefully invites some businesses to come in. We have to be mindful that we don't want to create competition where competition won't benefit the existing businesses. We have to keep the existing businesses paramount in our thinking here. A lot of questions.
Okay. Well, okay, so when you said a lot of questions, what are the challenges? Could you talk to us about the challenges of this plan?
Well, the challenges are some of the features in there, and I didn't get into the specifics, but for example, one of the things was the rain gardens were shown. And a garden like this, to handle runoff, road runoff, things like that. Sure, it sounds great. Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to make sure that it doesn't get blocked? Who's going to go out there and clean the pipes, twice a year? Who's going to do all this stuff? We don't have the resources. So things like that are labor intensive, where we don't have the labor, would never probably come to fruition with something like this.
Okay.
And that's really sort of the issue here. When it comes to the tree plantings, comes with a cost. You've got to prepare the ground so the tree can grow. You can't just plant it in the middle of the pavement and hope that something good happens, because it doesn't work like that. Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to fertilize it? Who's going to water it in the summer when we have a drought, especially the first few years when it hasn't really established itself? These are all things to talk about. And so we can get the money. We do receive a community development block grant every year. It's in the nature of $800,000. Some of it goes to pay the administration of the grant in the CETA office. We could put money into it, but how do you pay for it going forward? That's the question we've been asking ourselves ever since I've been on the Board of Selectmen with everything we do. Great idea, how do you pay for it going forward?
And now, okay, great idea, how do you pay it going forward? Could it be a community thing, such as running with volunteers? Really utilizing the people in this community, schools, make a day out of it, go and plant a tree, promote it in such a way.
Yeah, you may be able to generate something there, but remember, you're talking about the schools. The schools are in session and they get out in June, and then where do the kids go? And you're going to be able to get them back in the summer to do things. These are all the things to consider. Are they off doing stuff? Kids these days are very active. They don't have a lot of downtime. They don't have a lot of free time. There's a lot of planned activities. They're in sports leagues. They're in this, that, and the other thing. They're almost little adults being shuttled from job to job, you might say. And so, could you even get the kids?
Yeah.
These are all the things you have to sort of mull out. You'd have to talk with the schools. You'd have to talk with the school committee. You'd have to talk with the superintendent and say, do you have summer programs? Would you want to have a summer program for kids to go, do things down here? Okay,
so those are the challenges. Could we talk about the opportunities, the great things about if these plans go forward?
Well, if the elements that we think are desirable go forward, we'll make it more attractive back there. We will have more people back there. Some of the activities that have been happening back there, I'm not going to get too deeply into them, but there's been some drug trafficking back there. Historically, there always has been, and unfortunately, with the drug addict, they don't go too far from where they acquire the drugs to using the drugs because they can't wait. You would have more eyes back there. You would tend to discourage that sort of activity back there. We did get a couple of summer special police officers down there this summer, and that really helped. It tended to keep people moving along. They weren't hanging out on the park benches all day long, misbehaving, if you will. You would help improve the businesses, the business climate.
Have you spoken to these businesses?
I've spoken to some. I've spoken to some. I'm not going to get too public with those conversations because I don't know that they want me talking about things yet, but I have tried to engage with several of the businesses down there. One of the things we've done in Wareham is over the past, I want to say 10 years, we've made it very easy for larger business. We've made it very easy for big box stores, hence a Wareham crossing with large stores like Lowe's and Target and J.C. Penney, all of that, LL Bean, the whole 9 yards. Just about every chain you can think of, half of them have a store in there. And that's great because now Wareham residents don't have to go all the way to Dartmouth to buy stuff. But it came at a cost. The smaller businesses downtown now faced price competition. Even though people complain about parking on Main Street when I don't think it's really all that valid, for whatever reason they seem more willing to walk 200 feet to the store door at the Wareham crossing than they do down here in the village. So we do have to look at the parking. Even as a separate issue and try to see what we can do to make that a little easier or figure it out. But everything we've done has been to, develop some of these areas. Do we have enough for retail? I kind of think we do, for the big retail. What I'd like to do is see an effort poured back into the Main Street businesses and, again, an onset. I'm concentrating on Main Street. There's a couple of others on the board who are trying to do similar things in onset to try to improve that. And the issue here is, if you look at the streetscape,
Yes.
the bump outs, the plantings, all this stuff. Granted, it was federal money. It didn't come out of your property tax bill in Wareham did not pay for that. Your income tax bill did when you made out your check to the IRS. That absolutely paid for it. So we've invested, over $1 million down there on 3 phases of the streetscape. Do we want to improve a ghost town? Do we want to keep losing businesses down there? Do we want to, make it pretty, but you drive by and there's nothing in the window and the building starts to deteriorate because the landlord isn't getting any income and they're not going to bother improving the building without any income? No, we don't. So I think we have, obligation, almost a moral and ethical obligation, to try to help the businesses down there, to try to get things spruced up in there, to try to work with the landlords to try to improve some of these properties. Possibly grant programs to work on their facades along Merchants Way. You drive down Main Street, it looks pretty good. You drive down Merchants Way, you go, some of it's kind of ew. We've looked at the dumpster issue back there. We're thinking of possibly seeing if we can use some grant funds to, collectivize the dumpsters, if you will. We've got 12 different locations back there with dumpsters. It's not the most attractive. Some of them are sitting on town property without permission. We all just kind of drive by and, put the blinders on and don't think about it. But is that really what we want back there? If you're going to try to open this up and have people back there and, people kayaking and going to whatever is going to be in here and all this, that, and the other thing, do you want them looking at dumpsters and, some of the backs of the buildings which are kind of dilapidated? No, you're going to want to spruce those things up. You're going to want to take the dumpsters and try to get the businesses to agree. We'll have dumpsters at 4 locations. They'll be, in a stockade fence. Nobody's going to see them. All you're going to see is a stockade fence, once a week, twice a week, whatever. The truck comes and opens, swings the gate and dumps the dumpster and back in it goes and the gate gets closed and nobody sees these things.
Now, if this plan was to go through, let's say we vote for it in a town meeting and people
Well,
say
it wouldn't
yes.
require that necessarily.
Okay. But
because it doesn't really... Town meeting has great control over a lot of things. If there were budget items, it would certainly be voted on by town meeting. If it's grant funds, interestingly enough, that $800,000 grant that we get, the Community Development Block Grant, because we're considered a poor municipality, so we get these things based on demographics and some other things, that's actually under the control of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so if Board of Selectmen agree to pursue this plan, how long do you think it's going to take?
I wouldn't even hazard a guess.
Okay.
There's a lot of as you've heard, there's a lot of stuff involved. There's a lot of complex interactions would have to take place. Just the planning process. I mean, there are certainly things could be done right away. I mean, there's nothing really stopping us. For example, if we wanted to do the Sunday concerts or the Saturday afternoon concerts or whatever in the summer, there's nothing stopping us, now from blocking this off and painting murals. Maybe that doesn't have to be done right away. Maybe you just set it up so that people can go there. Put some chairs there, put some benches there, wherever people want to hang out. Those things you could do fairly quickly. Putting a boardwalk up, interesting from an environmental lawyer's point of view. You're near the water, so you've got the Conservation Commission, which would have some jurisdiction over it. You'd probably have to work with them. On the other hand, railroads are exempt from local conservation commissions under federal law. So is it a railroad project? Is it a town project? How do you do these things? That's something to talk about. Putting a pier in, you can't say that the railroad extends out into the water, so you do have to go to the Conservation Commission and get permission and get a waterways license from them to be able to put the pilings in and have a dock out there. So that could take some time. I mean, you're not looking at something that would happen overnight, but once you figured out what you wanted to do, some things would happen faster than others.
Yeah. So the study process of this project, where are we with it right now? Is it just forgotten and
Yep, these drawings were kicking around. They were prepared for a public meeting, I believe, in 2014. Might have even been 2013.
2013.
And we had a meeting in the Town Hall auditorium. And we also had another meeting over a parking study from which, I believe I gave you that information as well, that was sort of related but sort of not related. And people showed up. There were concerns. The presentation was made before the Board of Selectmen at the time. I was on the board then. And one of our now former members called this pretty pictures, because there wasn't any real substance behind it in terms of what the costs were, who was going to fund it, where the money was going to come from. Was it going to be partnerships with the Wareham Village Association, for example, or other organizations in town? How was this all going to work? So he wasn't too far off when he called it just pretty pictures. And right now, right now they remain just pretty pictures. The difference now is that we have some impetus in town to start making some improvements, to start straightening things out. Since I've been on the board, we spent a lot of time, correcting some mistakes in the past, getting our financial house in order, making sure we're solvent. That involved, unfortunately, taking services away from the residents. We did some unpopular things and managed to survive re-election. But nonetheless, we've done those things. We're well positioned. We're respected by the State Department of Revenue now, as opposed to being their poster child for bad behavior and financial mismanagement. So now is the time to concentrate on economic development for the town.
Okay.
And this is part of what I see as economic development, is trying to get people back into the village. When I was a kid, in the 60s, you had to pay attention when you were walking on the sidewalk, because you'd bump into people. There was a hardware store there. There was the McClellan's Five and Dime, which was kind of a mini department store, if you will. We had restaurants. We had a movie theater at one point. That burned down when I was real little. But it was vibrant down there. It was very busy. If you look at pictures from the 50s and 60s, that was a happening place. And we'd like to get it back to that. We want people to not just go to Wareham Crossing to buy their stuff and go to the chain stores. We want people back here.
Okay. So, all right. So I'm sensing that this is a great investment plan for the town. Yes, we have a long way to go, but at least now the idea is coming into the public, and people can see these photos, get inspired, and hopefully we can get ready to discuss the logistics of this plan.
Well, exactly. We have to decide, first off, what is it that we want? Okay, what is it that we want? Then we have to decide what of that is feasible, and then sort of winnow it down, and then go from there. And if so, where does the money come from? How do we fund it? Do we go after new money? Do we use existing money? Do we seek state aid with doing this? There's a lot to be done here.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, part of doing all of this, we have two departments in town that would be very much involved in this, but as of now, we just have sort of a part-time presence there, and that's the planning department, and that's the Community and Economic Development Authority. We have a consultant who we've brought in, who is the acting CETA director, but his primary responsibility is to administer the block grant. In other words, make sure that the social services portion is met. Compliance. It's a fairly complicated grant, and so he prepares the applications. He executes. Once the funds come in, he executes that. We are looking, and the process will start soon, as I understand it, to hire a full-time person to run both the Planning and Community and Economic Development Authority. And once that happens, this is going to be something that'll get dumped on their plate, because this dovetails with what those jobs are involved in.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming into the studio and sharing this plans with us. They look beautiful, and I would love to see them to be more than just pretty pictures.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're working on it. Okay. So.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for watching Who Are Wareham here at WCTV. With me, your host, Queen Banda. Again, today with me in the studio was Peter Tietlebaum, a selectman here in Wareham. And we talked about potentially how downtown Wareham could possibly look like if we get our affairs in order. So with that, I would like to say have a pleasant day. Bye.